thank you to all of our attendees for coming today. I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation. Really quickly, I want to say a thank you to our international sponsors, TMS Lighting, Planet Construction, Shop Association, and BMSD. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our moderator for today, which is Winston Wright.
Is that it?
Yeah, go for it.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Winston Wright. I'm a portfolio executive, a marketing portfolio executive with a lot of retail experience. The first half of my career was in brick and mortar. The second half of my career was on the product side or the vendor side, doing work in retail, and have always been in a marketing organization. And now I'm doing consulting, particularly for marketing projects as well as personal branding and marketing projects for people who are in job transition. I have three fabulous women with me today, and we're going to talk a little bit about self-development, which is really a great topic, regardless of age, rank, serial number, or anything in terms of where you are in your career. And I'm gonna let them introduce themselves so that you can get to know them personally, a little bit individually. And I've also asked them in their introduction to talk about one of their biggest hits. So Hilly, we're gonna start with you.
Yeah, hello everybody. So I grew up in Germany, studied architecture in Germany, and started working at a retail designer who had actually an office in Germany and in New York. So that got me started to see what New York has to offer. And then I really switched and started working at Rockwell Group for quite a while. If you don't know Rockwell Group, we are a design company here in New York. I guess over 300 people, I would say. We do obviously retail, but also a lot of hospitality projects, hotel, casinos, restaurants. But another arm of our kind of like design passion is Broadway shows. That's really David's passion. And I would say what's really important for Rockwell Group is to say that hospitality is actually important for everything you do. I mean, even a retail store, it's kind of like a hospitality projects because you offer the space to the public, if you will. And I think the one project which stands right now out for me is actually the extension for Penn Station, the Moynihan Station. And everybody who knows Penn Station in New York, is not really a great place to be, to have to go to. And we were asked to think about and design the waiting area. And this design really started right at the beginning of the pandemic. We all had to learn to be on Zoom calls, if you will, and start the design as a team who were not really together. And I think in these 2 years, I think we really created a really nice, great hospitality area where people really love to wait and be. And for that reason, I want to say that was really like an outstanding and special project for us.
Thank you, Hilly. We may be able to lean back on that in later in the session, in that whole notion of hospitality being the notion of experience.
Yeah.
How experience gets worked into design. Carly Russell, I'm going to go to you next.
Hi, everybody. Carly Russell. I'm working on 7 years in the industry, and I've worked at 2 large firms in Dallas, Texas. So my perspective is coming from kind of that mid-level designer with large firm experience. Right now I'm at Callis and RTKL in the retail sector, and I work mostly on flagship locations and prototype designs for brands. My most recognizable or probably more known work will be with 7-Eleven on their flagship and what they call their lab stores. These are the convenience stores of the future, and we've worked on about 11 locations with them. We designed the first drive-through location for 7-Eleven, the first 2-story location. Each location has been a little bit unique and different, and we continue to keep pushing the boundaries on what that convenience store experience is for the consumer of today. They combine restaurants with their stores now and a lot of other new exciting elements. And I started on a Target account, which was just rollout, which is a big, I think, part of retail design is rollout and production work, because that's kind of where you can make a lot of profit. And then these other fun projects that you get to work on, branding and prototype designs, is a whole other side of it. So I've been on both sides, and I had to be really consistent and persistent to get onto the side I wanted to be on for my career path and my future career goals. So it's been a lot of fun working here, and I'm just so excited to continue developing and curating my career there.
Thank you, Carly. Helen.
Good morning, good afternoon. I guess it's afternoon now. I'm Helen Herrick, and I am originally from Seattle, and I went to college and grad school there and worked for a couple of firms. I developed a great passion for retail and hospitality design, so that I made the jump to the client side. So I worked for Eddie Bauer, Gap, Ann Taylor, and then the last retailer I worked for was Capital One Bank, where I led the design team for the Capital One cafes that I'm sure everyone is extremely annoyed seeing those ads over and over again. It's always interesting for me, though. I get to see how the design has evolved since I left there via the advertisement. I am now back on the firm side. I lead the New York office for MBH Architects. We specialize in retail, hospitality. We also do lab spaces and housing and mid-rise commercial as well. And I would say just highlight of kind of our pandemic exciting projects. We did the first 2 physical stores for the Wayfair company. We did Joss in Maine and All Modern in the Boston area. And those were designed mostly in remote meetings. So we were able to launch those with a team in 4 or 5 different cities, but I'm very proud of that work. And I'm excited to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, ladies. That's terrific. Just for the audience, part of what we want to get out of this today is, of course, to be open and talk about with you interesting approaches and ways and the importance of self-development as you are, if you're in the first half of your career. How are you going about that self-development? And if you're in the second half of your career, how can you help? Or how do you also continue that self-development? Probably leaning a little more into how can you help, but just talk about the necessity, for lack of a better word, or the opportunity to continue to improve. So I'm going to start with Carly. And Carly, talk to us for a minute about, as you mentioned, you got to the side of the business you wanted to, as a young designer. Talk to us about how you identify what it is you need to learn, and then maybe an example or two of how you've gone about doing that.
Sure. So for self-development, I think the most important thing is to always be willing to learn new things. Like, my plan forever, even when I'm retiring, is to continue to learn from everyone I have around me and all the resources that are available to us today. So always learning new things, accepting new challenges, and that kind of leads you leads me into how I've kind of identified where I want my career path to go. And I think the very first step in that is identifying what your career goal is. So what is your 10 and 20-year career goal? Where do you want your future to be? It's very, very important to me that I'm the curator of my career. I don't want somebody else to pigeonhole me into something that I wasn't planning on doing. It's not the reason I got into the industry. It's not the reason I went to school and got my degree, just because I'm good at it. Because I can be good at a lot of different things, but what is my passion? What makes me happy? What is going to make me most fulfilled in my career goal at that 10 and 20-year mark? So writing that down in a planner, in a journal, reading it regularly so that it's always at the forefront of your mind, I think is the very first thing that you should do. Because there's so many different career paths. You might get into design thinking, I want to do interior design, or you might get into architecture saying, I want to be an architect. But once you get into the industry, you see all these different avenues that you're able to take. Do you like project management? Do you like concept design? Do you like holistic design, taking something from concept all the way through to construction? Or maybe you prefer FF&E, specifications, BIM development. Your passion could change as you gain experience. You could want to be more on the marketing side, research, sustainability. I mean, there's so many different avenues. So first identifying that, and then the very second thing I think that is most important to identifying what you need to learn to get to achieve that goal is having those open and honest conversations with your superiors. That's been the one thing that has helped me the most. I wouldn't say that I have like a formal mentor relationship, but my vice president, my boss, is my mentor. He has been my mentor for the past 3 years, whether he knows it or not, he is, because he's very open to having a regular annual conversation with me about my goals. And then he's my biggest advocate. So he helps introduce me to the right people, to the right clients. He advises on what conferences and events I should attend to help me achieve my long-term goals. And so that's been really important. He even talks to me about what softwares I should learn for what clients we're about to have and what projects we're about to take on. So I'm able to go and buy books, brush up on softwares that I maybe haven't touched, rendering programs that I think are new and exciting and could be helpful to that client. And then even social media, and using social media to follow experts in that project type or in that software is so important. The resources we have today are just never ending. So not having available resources is not an excuse anymore. And so tapping into all of those things to help get you where you need to go in life and identify what skills and hone and practice those skills is the most important thing, I think.
So it's only not self-identification, but it's also collaboration with your coworkers, your friends, your family, your boss, the people you work with, collaborating with them so that they can help you identify areas for your own development. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Tap into the people that are your advocates. And there's so many different personalities in our industry. There's going to be people who aren't interested in helping you. They're more interested in themselves, and that's fine. Don't talk to them about it. Go find the people that are going to be your advocates and tap into those resources, because those are going to be the most rich ways of getting that knowledge and identifying those skills.
Helen, as a manager of a group, as a manager of a studio, and again, kind of thinking about what Carly just said, what expectations do you have of your team around self-development? And part two, how do you encourage them to self-develop, or is it something that that you just expect them to do. Talk to us about your expectation as a manager in terms of the individual self-development process.
Well, I think Carly made a very good point that you as an individual you are the one in charge. You are the project manager, the CEO of your career. You are the one that needs to drive the boat on that. But I think speaking with your manager, making it clear, you know what, these are my goals. This is what I'm excited about and what I want to be doing. In 1 year, 5 years, I want exposure to this. And making sure that they understand that. I think the worst thing you can do, I think, is to assume that your manager knows what your goals are. If you haven't said it, they may not know. And so the communication, I think, is key. And then, as a manager, I would look for opportunities, different clients that they can work on, different project types they can work on. And then again, as Carly mentioned, other resources. There are so many resources. You are not confined to the people sitting around the table with you. There are so many people out there that you can, listen to their TED Talks, call them up. I do think if you ask as an individual who wants to advance their career, I think if you see someone who is doing something very interesting, or you see that they've been successful in one aspect of their career, ask them now with Zoom, ask them for a 15-minute Zoom. Most people really like to talk about themselves. Most people would say yes. And some people will say no and just, move on down the line. There are plenty of people to talk to. And one thing too, if you talk to someone and they're talking about something that you're very interested in, ask them if they have another colleague or someone else that you could continue the conversation. I think, be open. And when you see somebody doing something interesting, ask them about it.
Thanks, Helen. And Hilly, kind of along that same line, as a manager, as a leader, and as an experienced leader, you're looking at your team in terms of how can they get better every day. Talk to us a little bit about how you kind of gauge not only the group but individuals within the group. And how do you go about meeting them where they are? Because individually they could be at different stages, but as a group, they're probably at a certain stage. How do you recognize that, and how do you meet them where they are?
Yeah, so very often kind of like we have groups of 4 to 5 people being involved in a project. And very quickly you recognize what one person is a little bit more passionate or feels like, okay, I'm just a young designer. I feel safe in that field. I can do this. I'm a little bit afraid maybe to touch something in this field. And when you see that, you obviously want to support every designer and architect, that they start with something they have learned before, but you also want to kind of like help them go a little bit out of their comfort zone, because the goal at the end of the day is that they actually learn more, be more independent, that you even can give them a project where they're solely working on their own and you don't have to get so often involved. But you can really do this in a more supportive way, that you are saying, listen, take 2 days and look at this and this challenge. Even if you don't have the knowledge right now, come to me with questions, but really dig yourself in for 2 days and really think about that. And let's see what you come up with. Just to kind of like push them maybe also a little bit out of their comfort zone, if you will, to help them to make it to the next level. I think that's really important. You really want to help people to grow. And I think that helps obviously the project, and it helps obviously the company.
And Hilly, I'm going to stick with you for a minute. I don't want to scare anybody, but how do you how do you communicate to your team and maybe even your peers? How do you suggest to them, communicate to them that if you don't get on this wagon, you're going to get left behind? Or do you communicate that? How do you support encouraging them to self-develop?
Yeah, so I would not do this in this threatening way at all. I would really put like really a more positive spin to it, which I strongly believe is like, be open. I think what really architecture and design makes it so great, and we all love the field, is that there are so many different aspects of the job. I mean, from designing to even management, to even the side of the law, if you will, like rules and regulation. There's so much to it that don't put yourself so quickly in a niche because you feel secure. Like be open. And even if you don't know something, everybody is okay that you have a question and say, I don't know it. What do I need to know? Look at this. I did a detail. I don't know how I solved this. How could I do this? I think communication, being open, and really kind of like pull them a little bit in the direction in like try to learn, and don't see this as like, oh, if I don't learn this, I will not be good enough. See it as something positive, and and make your life, your work professional day even better by learning something. See it really positive.
I think Hilly brings up a really interesting thing here, and that from a self-development and self-discovery and growth perspective is really important. It's all right to say, I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
I worked at a woman with Toys R Us, and she used that answer when she didn't know the answer for 2 years. And I'm not saying that's right, but if you don't know the answer, you don't know the answer. And I think that sometimes people get concerned that they're not going to look smart, or they're going to look, it's going to be a bad reflection on them. The only way that you're going to be able to learn is not only to admit it to yourself, but talk to other people about it so that they can help you identify what it is you need to do. I want to go back to Carly about the career path piece, based on something that Hilly said. There's the management route, and there's this route, and there's that route. As you're growing your career right now, are you looking at all of those possibilities and narrowing them down year after year? Or are you still open to everything? And if you're still open to everything, what are you doing to learn about those everythings?
So for me personally, I've always been passionate about design. I was one of those people who knew I wanted to go into interior design in 5th grade. In my mind at that age, it was residential, because that was my current issue, was my house with 3 brothers and sisters, and only 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom to share. And so how can we organize and make this so much more efficient? That's always what was on my mind. But as I got into college and learned about the industry, I was like, no, I don't want to do residential. I want to do, I didn't know what I wanted to do, actually. I ended up getting into retail because of my internship. I had a year-long internship that was really great, and I learned a lot, and I met a lot of really great people. A couple of the people I worked with in my internship were 10-year into their career, and they just felt like I had so much worth. They could see my passion for what I was doing and my drive for wanting to learn. And so they actually highly recommended me to some contacts that they had. That's what got me here. And I haven't left since, because the culture has been great. My boss has been great. And I really think it's important to like the people you're working with, because I've been in a position where it felt very political, and the personalities around me I did not thrive off of. once I made the switch, I was like, this is awesome. I felt that passion come back. I felt like my personality was able to shine and thrive. And so if you're not in that position now, you may want to start looking for that. It's not a bad thing to want to look for something else and get yourself in a place where you feel like you can thrive. But I think for me, I started to look for gaps that I could fill on the team. So basically, I wanted to fill a gap that satisfied my career goals and made me a necessity to my team. I think not being a commodity is really important in our industry, especially if you're working in a large firm. You don't want to be expendable to your company. So for example, you want to be a unique asset is what I'm trying to say. So look for ways that your skills can elevate what your team has to offer clients. For example, if you're on a team of 5 drafters and they have 1 designer and you want to get onto the design side eventually, drafting is great to start learning, by the way. You need to learn how to draft and how things go together. But eventually, if you want to get off that side of it and go more into the design side, you need to speak up. You need to not be afraid to be like, I want to render more. I have hand sketching skills. This designer is really great at presenting to clients, but they don't render as good as maybe I could offer the team. And just start showing your boss, like, I want to do this. I have the skills to do this, and be really persistent in that. Is going to take you a long way. So finding a gap to fill that's going to fulfill your career goals and make you feel fulfilled will help immensely.
Can I add something to that? I think it's also important to see, a lot of young designers come to our company that don't push or put yourself too quickly into a niche. I think that's also important, because I think, especially in the design field, if you are a good designer, you actually do know how to put things together. So don't put yourself too quickly into the niche. Oh, I only want to design, and then it gets to somebody else's desk and they have to figure it out. Or I don't know the rules here. Or, like you need to basically your entire career kind of like be open to every aspect of the business, and don't start really this niche thinking and you want to just fill that gap right at that moment, because after a couple of years you may want to change. So be always open to what's going on in the business. I think that's really important.
I agree, Hilly. Being really well-rounded as a designer and knowing codes, knowing drafting skills, knowing architectural details, those things are going to make you a better designer. So being open to learning about all of those aspects is really, really going to be useful in your career.
Yeah.
May I add one thing too, Carly, that you said kind of middle of what you were talking about teams and getting the feel for whether this is a team that is open to people's individual growth. I think, I know everybody says when you're interviewing for a job, you should be interviewing the firm as much as they are interviewing you, or you are interviewing the company as much. It's hard to tell, but I think one thing, especially with Zoom interviews where they're often, it's a whole screen full of people. I think it's pretty easy to tell when you have multiple people from one company in an interview, whether or not they respect each other and they're kind to each other, and they can have wildly different passions and skills and philosophies, but you can tell whether they treat each other well. And I would say before you make a move from one place to another, it may be the right thing. This is the work I want to do. This is the industry I want to be in. But if the team isn't there and they're not a supportive group, it's going to be a very temporary move for you. So watch the little nuances.
And I'll lean into that a little bit, Helen. That's really, really a great point. I think part of maybe half, I think part of self-development is self-awareness and being honest with yourself. And to Helen's point, if you're talking about a new role in your organization, or talking about a role in another organization, where are the gaps? How do you identify those gaps, both from a tactical skill set perspective, but also from a cultural perspective, and where you can develop yourself culturally from a cultural perspective in terms of asking questions and understanding what works well here, what doesn't work well here. And the other thing I think that for me at least is important is the notion of understanding expectations, both from a performance perspective, from a role perspective, but also in terms of what's expected as your contribution to the culture of the company. So that being said, and I'll start with Helen, where, as a leader, and also because I know you as somebody who is always interested in not going to sleep at night without having learned one more thing, where do you draw your inspiration? Where do you identify where, and what are your passions? How do you go about learning outside the box?
Well, I mean, I think everybody has touched on this, that you always be looking to learn and to grow. It could be, as Carly said, it could be a rendering program. It could be, I signed up for welding a couple of years ago. It is a fascinating exploration of physical design that you don't get necessarily in the architectural world. But also be observant. I think in this day and age where we're all listening to a podcast on the way to work or on the way to meet somebody, take the headphones out and pay attention. I mean, just today I was walking to the office and there's a piece of art. I actually printed it out and put it on our bulletin board to ask people, is this art or is this weird? And it was basically a stick in a white wall with light on it that had then the stick made lines on the wall. I don't know, but it made me pause. It made me think. And I think just being observant, being open to seeing what's around you, both if it's a class or meeting somebody, kind of putting yourself out there, to have conversations that are new and that are different, that you will learn something. I mean, I go to a lot of conferences and I know a lot of people there, and you walk into a room and you want to sit with all the people you know because they're great and it's going to be a lot of fun, but I won't necessarily learn anything new there. So you go to another table where, sometimes the conversation isn't so great, but sometimes you end up learning something about somewhere or someplace or some new design idea or some new food, mostly, or travel, usually, that leads you down a path that is just amazing. So I think it's taking those risks to not stay with what is comfortable.
Be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Definitely.
Hilly, anything you would like to add to that?
Yeah, I definitely also agree with that. It's like, inspiration can be everywhere. And I think right now, kind of like the time of the internet, we have the inspiration at our fingertips, if you will, but it's also great to kind of like let that be. And to be very honest, really like have a stroll in the park and you see something which inspires you. I think something like that is important. But I also think, again, networking and learning from others. In our field, I find the most important thing, or what I find actually gives me inspiration, is that I actually learn from fabricators. and artists who come to the office and show their work, and you collaborate with them and you learn about a material you have no idea what that is. And that gives you, because you learn so much, it gives you also a whole set of inspiration. So something like that, I think it's also really great.
I'm addressing the audience now. We don't have any questions in the chat or the Q&A, so please, if you've got questions that you'd like to ask, please put them in the chat or the Q&A. Just one thing for me personally, and this leans into all three of the comments from these three women. I'm especially interested in Carly's bringing up social media and how social media plays in some of the things that we're doing. And then from Helen and Hilly, this whole notion of openness and not putting yourself into a box yet. There's somebody on this call who follows me on Instagram, and I like to take a picture of the sky and post it on my Instagram and say, this is what the universe looks like from where I am at that particular moment in time. My point is, we can't be afraid of the inspiration of the infinite. You can't. You just can't be afraid of that sort of inspiration. So now I'm going to go around the room again, and I'm going to start with Hilly. Other than, something tragic, I don't want to go there. What was the most inspiring moment of your life? I'm putting you on the spot, which is good for Carly and Helen because they get to think about it for a minute. What happened? Was it moving to the US? Tell us something in your life that was really impactful from an inspirational perspective.
Okay, everybody, please don't laugh. So I think I was maybe 10, 12. And at my family's home, there was a tree. This became our climbing tree because it had, the way it was formed, it was amazing. So my brother and me would go there all the time. And you could almost like lay within the tree and you saw all the leaves around you. You were like immersed within the tree. And I will never forget the moment, like there was this kind of like sun coming through. And I was saying to my brother, listen, no palace in the world can be as beautiful as what we see right now here. And it stuck till this day with me, that this was this room in nature we were immersed by, if you will. And really, I'm telling you, it was a big inspiration. And I always say this, nature is the best inspiration for every design, if you will. I mean, it's a kind of like quirky story, but it's really stuck with me.
Not at all. Helen?
So I on the spot, I guess, but I will say just kind of the complete opposite. And I completely agree with you. Nature is amazing. I would say when I first moved to New York over 20 years ago, and I would stand on one of the avenues and you would see all of those buildings, if you couldn't see the end of it. And I remember just being in awe of, okay, there are so many possibilities here. There are so many people, there's so many ideas, there's so many creative things happening around. And I try to bring that back now after 20 years. I look down and now I'm more like, oh, there's traffic or it's raining or something. But I try to bring that awe back of look at all of this and all of these people, and just the opportunities are endless.
That's great. Carly.
I jotted a couple things down while Hilly and Helen were, I got a couple more minutes to think about it, but I agree with the nature thing. I love nature. I grew up in Dallas, so I'm not like a nature woodsy person you would think, but truly at heart, I really am. We try, my husband and my daughter and I, we make escapes out to East Texas frequently, where there's 100 acres of treed land that we get to stay on. And when I'm out there just hiking, it's quiet, you hear birds, you're seeing these amazing tall cedar and pine trees. Those are when the most creative ideas come to my mind. When all the noise goes away, I'm able to see and think more clearly, I feel like, in nature. And nature is so inspiring. There's just little nooks and crannies that you discover that you're like, I don't know if anybody else in this world has ever seen this little cave that this rabbit made. Like, look at it. It's, it's just, there's a lot of things that are inspiring about nature. But I think for me, the most impactful moment, and it might kind of be a series or a couple of moments, and I touched on it earlier in 5th grade. I learned there was a career project. It was kind of our first project we had to present to our classmates. And so I was really nervous about it. I didn't know what career to choose. My teacher chose my career for me. I was the only one that she chose for me, and it was interior design. So that was the first time I learned what that even was. I had no idea. And then fast forward to high school, I took my first art class, and I was actually good at art. I discovered, I did not know that I had that skill. And so I had always thought about interior design, and now I'm thinking about art, and I'm thinking about my passion and desire that I've always had to make some sort of impact on the world, or just, to make some sort of difference in my life on the world. So I just thought about how I could combine these 3 things into what my future was going to be. And that's kind of how I discovered that I wanted to do interior design, and it just kind of snowballed as I learned more about it in college. So I think that teacher, that 5th grade teacher that happened to choose that for me, and then taking that first art class and seeing how much I loved drawing and that I was actually kind of good at it, and I could continue to hone that in that career that I was already thinking about, was really impactful.
I'm gonna ask myself the question as well, because it ties in so interestingly. I've kind of got 2. The first time I ever went to Japan, I checked into the 52nd floor of a hotel in central Tokyo, and it was late in the afternoon when I got there. It was summertime, late in the afternoon, about 8 or 9, and I was in a room that had a corner window, and I walked into the room and went to that window, and the sun was setting behind Mount Fuji, which means, number one, it was a very clear day in Tokyo. And number 2, it took my breath away. And my reaction was, there's just so much out there I don't know. So much I've never seen, so much I've never done. I'm into this. And the other place for me, and this is kind of similar to both Helen and, well, to everybody, I love to go to a remote part of the beach, any beach, I don't care, as long as it's an ocean. I love to go to a very, very remote part and just sit there and watch the ocean do what it's been doing for hundreds of thousands of years. It really centers you and kind of says, here's where you are, dude. Here's where you are. Thanks for that. I understand from Catherine that we've got some questions. So, Catherine?
Sure. We have a few questions kind of around this topic, so I'm going to combine a few together. And everyone, if we don't get your questions to your question today, we are going to have an Ask Me Anything session where we can answer a few more in a couple months. So one of the main areas that people want to hear a little bit about is what is the role of a manager in helping somebody self-develop, and what kind of programs or opportunities do your companies offer to young associates and older ones to continue to grow within the firm?
Let's start with Helen, and then go to Hilly, and then go to Carly.
So, I mean, the role of a manager, and a good manager should care about their team and want them to grow. So definitely, as we talked about before, share your goals with your manager, and then ask them, what are the resources? What do you recommend? And what opportunities are there for the clients that I'm working for now, for future clients? Would you mind making sure that, the next client or the next project, I have some exposure to this? And most managers, if they can, will absolutely make that happen for you. Here at MBH, and I won't name names of what firm, but I worked for a firm many years ago, and it was very brief, where they said, "Oh, we don't train. You have to go outside to get that training." I would love to go check back with that firm now, because I think that is such a disservice to their firm, because all they were doing is saying, "Please work here until you are bored with what you're doing and then leave," which I did. So, and which most people probably do. So here at MBH, I mean, we have training programs that we do with all of our job captains to teach them technical skills. We also offer both technical skills and training, and kind of those soft skills for project managers. I mean, like a typical firm, we do lunch and learns, we do site visits, we do retail tours. We're always looking for opportunities to expose the entire team to what is happening. I mean, in New York, it's fantastic to be able, there's so much going on. You could walk down the street and just, look at a construction site and talk about things. So I would say it's an open willingness to look for any opportunity to train, and then to provide the space and support for all staff. I don't want to say just the junior staff. I mean, I think everybody all the way through retirement should be learning and growing.
Hilly?
Yeah, so actually what we do at Rockwell Group, which I really think it's great, is it's kind of like show and tell. So we are organized, I think we are now 7 studios, I forgot, which are kind of like mini offices, if you will, mini management groups. And what we do once in a while is that a team finished a project, and on a Friday lunchtime or later afternoon, they kind of like show the project to the studio, describe the ideas and how they came to the solutions, what the challenges was, what you maybe have to be aware of for other people working on something. And I think that's great because, listen, if you are like a larger company, you want to sometimes know what the other team is doing and learn from them. So that I think it's really helpful for all of us, because we all are learning. And also once in a while we have obviously a vendor coming in, a fabricator, have a little learning session, what that means about the product, about the fabrication process. And even we had this in the past, not right now, but we had even other designers coming in. We had Tom Dixon, as a world-renowned lighting designer, came to our office and talked about his design. And it's really about, we are all a large community, and we want to learn from each other, and we want to help as a manager, making actually the team member in the group more independent, that they can take on more projects. I think it's a great goal, to really shape the next generation, if you will.
Carly?
Yeah, so for the manager role question, part of the question in self-development, I really feel like it's first going to come from you and building a relationship with your manager, because your manager might have a whole team of people that they're managing. If you're not stepping up to them and telling them that you want to learn, that you have these goals, then they're busy. I mean, they're going to keep doing their day-to-day things and managing their people. So first, be the one to step up and talk to them first and see how they react. I think it's great to have a manager or superior, some sort of superior who's going to be an advocate and help you self-develop. Not all of them will be that way though. So while it's not in their job description a lot of times to help you self-develop is kind of what I'm getting at. So it needs to come from you first. And if you have a person in your life who is willing to help you, that's a bonus and you should use it. For us at our company, we also have a lot of like impromptu lunch and learns where you can go have lunch and sit down in a room, a big conference room with your coworkers, and somebody's coming and presenting about some, sustainability, or there's a lot of different topics that can come in and do a lunch and learn, and you get to go and choose to go to those. But one thing that Callus and RTKL does that I think might be a little unique is they offer annual allowances for every employee to spend on things like if you want books that can help you develop a certain aspect of your job, you can expend it. I mean, they will buy it for you. Or if you want to take a class that's going to help you hand draw better or help you learn a software, you can expend it. I mean, they give you a certain amount of money, so you might have to pay out of pocket depending on how much it costs and what it is you're wanting to do. But they give you money to do that, which is great because some of that stuff can be expensive, and it's something you need to invest in, especially being young in your career.
I think the overall answer to that question is be fearless. Don't be afraid to ask for something, and also don't be afraid to do something on your own. Be fearless in helping yourself in any way you can. I think we've got time for one more question, Catherine, before we wrap.
Sure. Returning to the notion of understanding expectations, are there examples of moments when you saw these very clearly? How were they explained? Or did you find the outline for where did you find the outline for a project or role, technical or strategic?
So I'll kind of start with answering that. Again, I'm going to lean into being fearless. And by that, I also mean, if you're unclear about something, ask the question. There's neither Helen nor Hilly nor Carly is going to say, I don't have time for your questions. If you've got a question, ask it. Be fearless. And like good customer service, part of good job performance is managing expectations on both sides. So if you don't understand what it is, it's a really simple question. What is it that you want me to do here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think it's important because you don't, as a manager, you don't want that it kind of like the train goes out of the station far, and then you realize, oh, that person actually didn't understand what you need right now. So it's all about good communication.
The luggage, the train left, the luggage is still on the platform. That does nobody any good.
Yeah.
It doesn't do you good. It doesn't do the company good. It doesn't do your manager good. Again, be fearless. You've got to say, what is it that you want me to do here? And I'm going to even blow that up just a little bit. especially when it comes to, is this going to affect somebody's, and now we're going to get ugly about it, is this going to benefit somebody's top line, bottom line, or brand growth? And everything you do for your client, whether, because if you're on the agency side, everything you do for your client affects top line, bottom line, and brand growth. You don't want, ask the question, what are we trying to achieve here? And what's my role in achieving that?
I would just quickly add for the question that I've experienced this a lot, that lines can be really blurred between roles, project management role versus designer role versus drafter role. Sometimes I feel like I'm doing a little bit of everything because I need to, or because they need help, or I need help. And so I've found it really useful, again, to go to my superior, the manager, and say, I don't mind doing these tasks. I can and am able to do these tasks, but it would be really helpful for me and for the project and for the deadline if somebody else who's maybe a little bit better at these tasks could take those on. And just having that conversation, be honest and be open. Otherwise, they're not going to know. They're going to keep loading your plate. You have to let them know, I can do these things. Somebody else needs to do these so that we can stay on our deadline.
And at the end of that day, you can say, I don't do these things real well.
Yep.
That's something that could help me. I'm going to go back to my manager and talk about, help me do a little bit deeper dive on this so that I know more about it, so that either I can help out better next time, or it's just another opportunity to learn something new before you go to sleep at night. And I think that's the important part. We are 2 seconds from, we're past it. Thank you all very much. Thank you to the panelists. Thanks, RDI, for letting me lead the orchestra. And Catherine, do you have anything to close with?
No, just thank you again to all of you for being here, to our panelists, to Winston for running this, to our sponsors. Again, I'm going to list them: TMS Lighting, Planet Construction, Shop Association, and BMSD for making conversations like this possible. I hope you guys all have something that you took away from it, and we will see you in a month to talk about leadership development.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.